Hello and welcome, and I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you the top 10 most superior arc tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10, we have got ourselves the Spinosaurus, and I'm putting this thing here as in every way to me, this creature does seem superior to the Rex. Maybe not in the health department, but everything else does summarize this creature as being superior to me. These things, although they do not spawn as regularly as the Rex, they have significantly higher mobility and can output a lot more damage, especially once influenced with that hydration buff. It really ends up making a huge difference, and it is something which you should definitely be considering, especially if you're doing the Moda boss fight. I know it's a bit more of an obscure thing, but still, that does come into a factor, especially on Gen 1, but also just generally for underwater caving. If you're doing that, or underwater exploration, you're going to encounter some enemies which you're going to want to kill, and this can do it extremely effectively. Also, just on top of this as well, I find it just does better in bosses because of the better mobility that this thing has. It can just dodge more, and it gets around the boss arenas a lot more easily, especially when you go into the tech cave. It really can be a pain to bring Rexes down there, as they are some of the most stupid creatures in the game outright. Also, on top of this as well, they can go onto their hind legs and deal even more damage, which is great, and they can do 360 turns on the spot, so they've got the turning circle of an absolute god, which really does make these creatures such a nice one to have. And I think stop using Rexes and use these things. I know it's a bit of a general term, but I find these things are better, and as long as you can find some high level ones and breed them up, you're really going to have a good time with these things. Next up, we have got ourselves the Mantis, and this creature is here is it is just the superior gatherer of any resource. Like, you can just get tons of stuff with this, and I know the Anki and the Dodic really are great gatherers, and you should definitely use them. I just find when you combine them all into one with the Mantis, I have a better time with it. Your opinions obviously may differ, and feel free to comment below your thoughts on these creatures and if you think that you would go differently on this list. But for me, the Mantis is the way to go for resource gathering. I'll transfer it onto other maps if it doesn't actually natively spawn on it, especially if I'm ever playing on the island, because most of my friends like to dwell on that map. It is just so nice. You can equip any melee weapon to these things. They are also really fast. This has had some extra movement speed put on it. It's quite significant actually, so it's not this speed by default, but you can really get some ripping fast ones, and if you put some good weapons on them, they can deal a heck of a lot of damage as well. And actually, if you're on Scorched Earth, they're not a bad idea of boss creature for the Manticore, although I would find that maybe you could use some other creatures like Rexes or Aloes or things like that, but I'm actually not too sure of what spawns on the map because I haven't done a whole lot of Scorched Earth playing. But yes, the Mantis is a harvesting god, and to me, it's one of those superior arc tames. Continuing on our list, we have got ourselves the Carcharodontosaurus, and it's pretty obvious why this creature is here. Come on, you've got the Giga, that thing that's been in the game since 2015, and now you've got this thing, and it is essentially the Giga but better in every single way. The only real downsides I can think of is the taming method can be a little bit of a drag, especially if it bugs, and they don't necessarily deal more damage than the Giga until you've actually got that blood rage up to its fullest, which actually really is not too difficult of a thing to do, and in combat you're just going to keep dealing tons and tons of damage with these creatures. And obviously they have tons more health, not necessarily just because they have a much higher health stats, but because they no longer have the rage meter, which is something which you'll find on the Giga. Essentially now you just have your full health instead of kind of a percentage of your health, if you will. And also their stamina isn't atrocious as well. You did just see me level all of the levels into stamina, by the way. That wasn't just your eyes faking you. Wouldn't recommend doing it, but I was just generally showcasing the stamina actually doesn't level too bad on these things. But probably if you're really worried about this, just get a stamina mutation once you breed them. Don't do it. You'll want to be leveling up melee and health just as a general thing instead. That's the way to go with these things, but they really are a huge upgrade to the Giga, and that's why they have to be on the list. In at the number 7 spot, we've got the Argentavis, and I know everyone out there is going to love their Pteranodons, and I know it does kind of serve a little bit of a different purpose. This is why I'm putting it further back on the list and not right to the front of it, but personally I think the the RG is just a much better creature all round than the Pteranodon. Again, I know they have different uses. I'm not just necessarily saying like this is objectively better for everything than a Pteranodon, but broadly I would say it is. Although yes, the speed isn't there, their stamina and weight is so much higher, you never have to worry about stopping every single 5 seconds just to regen that stamina. Also on top of this as well, with the high weight, you can actually carry some stuff, especially metal, crystal and obsidian, considering the weight reduction they have on them, and also they can pick up a wider range of creatures too, and even creatures in their mouth. You've got 2 creatures at once that you can do. On top of this, their saddle does act as a smithy, making them ideal creatures for caving, especially because of those pesky arthropleuras. You won't go into caves with these creatures, of course, but still, with one of these things, you can, once you've got out of your cave, repair all of your gear if you're going off to the next one, because I usually like to do more than one cave in one go. That might be a controversial opinion, but I don't like to go back to my base after every single cave. I'll do more than one cave. That might not be a thing you do, that's a thing I do, and I find it really useful there. And they also have a nice regen buff as well when you kill something and you eat it. Honestly, it gets you out of so many bad situations you wouldn't realise how much you actually use it, but that's why the RG is here. So now we have the Crystal Wyvern, and I think this is just a hugely upgraded version of the Wyvern, and maybe it's not the biggest difference, so possibly hugely isn't the best word to use there, but I would say it's enough of an upgrade to really make a difference, and that mainly does come with ease of taming. These things are far easier than the Wyvern to tame. No more going into Wyvern trenches and waiting for things to raise up. You simply have to get to level 60, then knock out a Crystal Wyvern to get the Primal Crystal, and then just sit around for a little bit and get that passive tame done through, and then you've got yourself a Crystal Wyvern. I've heard a lot of you out there have been really enjoying the Ember Crystal Wyverns, and they are all-time favourite for me. So Blood Crystal Wyverns are just cool, and their ability just generally is really useful for me. This is a Tropical Crystal Wyvern, if you didn't know already, and it shoots water out of its mouth. And you might think, well, just the normal Wyverns are going to be stronger, right? Well, actually, they're pretty much on par, and I don't really think there's that much difference. It really just come down to what elemental ability you prefer best, but considering how much easier these things are to tame, they are just better, and they are on another level to me. Obviously, they still kind of have some of the same ergonomic issues, like the really awful turning circle, but they're such a fast, great creature to have, and you can actually get them pretty early on because note runs aren't that hard to do, and actually knocking out one of these things isn't the hardest thing in the world, and you kind of have to do the same for Wyvern milk anyway, so it's not really a big stretch when in terms of what you kind of have to do, although the other bit is a lot easier. Now, I know I love to support the Baryonyx end to end, but I do kind of have to admit that the Shadowmane is just a better all-round creature, apart from its limited accessibility compared to the Baryonyx, considering that it spawns not on the island, but I'm pretty sure it spawns on Fjorda. I might have got that wrong, but if it does, then it is still reasonably accessible. It's not really a strong point for this thing. It is just the better tame. It has a lot more mobility, it also has the pack buff, it has the hydration buff, it's fast, agile, it can swim in the water really fast and effectively. It is a great caving creature. It's the perfect size for it, but I would also say that this is an upgrade to something like the Thyla, and also on top of that, I'm just trying to get the creature out of my head and I can't for some reason. There we go. It's better than the Thyla, better than the Baryonyx in my opinion. They're the creatures that I think it kind of replaces a lot more, because yes, although it can't climb and all of that, it still can jump to insane heights. It really has it has a lot going for it, and that obviously that's why this creature has to be in at the number 5 spot. So continuing on, we have got ourselves the Desmodus. This is kind of the superior glider for me. I know they've all kind of got different abilities, like the Griffin, just something different to the Snow Owl, to the Desmodus, but I find out of everything, the Desmodus is the more useful one. To me, the Sanguine Elixir is an absolute cheat for tames, and I absolutely love taming, so it would make sense why this is definitely a favourite of mine. Also, I like the Bloodstalker a lot, and the tame method is very similar, and that is a nice thing for me to have and see. It just makes me like the creature more, and their gliding does feel very fluid and generally nice. I don't know what it is, there's some kind of placebo possibly, but as I go further on the list of flyers, I just feel like they control better, and this thing really does control amazingly. They can also go invisible at night time, but because the Wasteland Biome never actually goes to night, I couldn't show you this in the B-roll. I should really probably change this at some point so I can actually show off all of its features. It's a bit of negligence of what biome I actually recorded it in. But yeah, really great creatures. And also if you're a PvP player, you can pick riders off mounts with ease with these things. In at number 3, we have got ourselves the Maewing. And you could kind of say the Gigantoraptor does a similar job to this thing, and largely it does, although it does something slightly different, but it still can carry creatures in its saddle, exactly like the Maewing. I find the Maewing is still the better creature for me. It is fast, agile, so easy to tame, and just generally, like, come on, it's the Maewing, especially considering they're insanely fast traveling. Like, they are the go-to travel mount out there in Ark. By far, they really do deserve the number 3 spot on the list. They're so amazing, and although there is a little bit of a learning curve in actually flying on these things, as in the beginning, you'll find maybe they aren't the most ergonomic. Once you get used to it, you really are going to enjoy flying these creatures. It is an absolute dream to have one of these things, trust me, and you can get them about the same time that you'd be getting a raptor. So it's honestly so OP considering everything. And obviously you can use them as a portable feeding trough as well. They can carry babies, they can steal enemy baby creatures as well, and you can gather berries with them, skim across the top of the water with them. They really are great, just general all-rounders, but they're mainly excelling in the traveling aspect. Possibly controversially, I'm putting the Bloodstalker in at number 2, and there's one use for this creature which I absolutely love, and this is why I have to put it in at the number 2 spot. Personally, just ever since I was really young, I've loved the water, and this, in my opinion, is the best underwater creature out there. Just nothing can compete with that. I know the Basilo is a great one out there because it's immune to all the jellyfish and electric eels, but I find this creature is just so fast and so zippy underwater, and especially considering you can see all the aggros of all the creatures, it's really hard to get yourself into a very dangerous situation that you easily can't get out of, which, you know, it's a really nice kind of fail safe, and you can pretty much evade the danger before it even got you, as you can very clearly see all the stuff under the water, because it's not actually the clearest environment out there unless obviously you enable some mods, and it does have a lot of merit for being a traveling mount as well. Not as great as the Maewing, that definitely does excel more in that spot, but for that insane water traveling ability, I really do have to put it in at this spot, because I feel like people undervalue it for this, and it still does have the traveling thing going for it. Also, just as a general thing, it has quite a nice superior taming method in a way, you could say, because it's so inventive, it's so nice, and maybe, although not the most friendly from the beginning, I like a little of a challenge in that. It makes me feel like I'm working harder for a creature that I really do love so much, so that is why I'm putting this creature in at the number 2 spot. And finally, in at number 1, I've got myself the Deinonychus, because this creature to me is just the superior of superior creatures. And I know things like the Reaper and Rock Drake and rock golems and titanosaurs and gigas and all of those things, they all exist, and although some of them I've mentioned on this list with a better replacement, I find that yes, maybe there are some creatures that I've missed on this list, but to me the Deinonychus is always solidly in at the number 1 spot when talking about the most superior creatures. It's so small, agile, and very easy to tame. You essentially just go up to their nest and you raise the egg, and you can get out relatively easily if you have a grappling hook or some kind of flyer. You get these things between level 30 and level 40. That's around the time that I'd be getting these things anyway. And once you assemble a pack of these things, you really can dominate the maps. They just deal insane amounts of damage and can deal bleed damage to boss as well, and grapple onto them, do all kinds of stuff to them, and it really is just so OP. They are a huge upgrade to something like the Thyla. Yes, the Thyla does deserve a lot of respect, but these things are just better. They climb as well like the Thyla, although the Shadowmane can't do that, which is why personally I'm also putting these things above the Shadowmane as well. Obviously that creature was only in at the number 5 spot. They can just do everything apart from the underwater thing that the Shadowmane can do, but apart from that, everything else, they are better boss creatures in my opinion than something like the Shadowmane. They've got that pack buff, they can deal heavy amounts of bleed damage, which definitely does outweigh the hydration buff. They really are the top superior creature to me. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.